Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back at Friday night. What the heck is going on? Happy Friday night. Hope you guys have had a kick-ass, unstoppable week. I'm fired up because we have a great show in store for you tonight, ladies and gentlemen. But before I get ahead of myself, I would like to just say welcome, welcome, welcome. We are excited that you guys are here, whether you're here on the live broadcast of this particular show Friday night, or if you're catching it on the replay. We always appreciate you guys commenting and asking us questions as we're going through this particular process of having a conversation with somebody where we ask the tough questions, where we try to dig deep in order to really get to the root cause of the situations that the people have overcome. Because we can sit here and talk about symptoms and semantics all day long, but until we drive deep into what the root cause of something is, then how can we impart upon you the knowledge and the intelligence and the tips and the tricks to be able to impact your life really to the biggest impact that you could possibly have. So that's what we do here when we bring a guest here every single Friday night. We talk about a variety of subjects. As you know, we've tackled all sorts of current political issues and socioeconomic issues and motivation issues and mindset issues and everything else, but we have a great time doing it, and we have a lot of fun with our guests, and we're intending on doing that this evening as well. Good evening, Randy. So nice for you to be here with us. We appreciate you being here. Glenda, good to see you. Good to see you. Our kick-ass misfits for life. Of course, you're a misfit out there if you're watching this, and we just love the fact that if you're engaged in this conversation tonight, please consider sharing this. We're going to be talking about a lot of really good, juicy stuff about mindset, about overcoming things, about fighting for what's right and what's fair, about risking, against, injustices, and having the mindset and the power to know that whatever you're going through, you're going to survive and perhaps even thrive out of that situation. So we're super excited. Darlene, good to see you from Florida. I'm on the other coast. I'm here in California, and my beautiful co-host is from Austin, Texas. What's up, Scott Goyette? How are you?
I'm bringing up the middle. We got both coasts. We got me here in Austin, and our guest today is actually originally from Austin. He's up in Waco right now. So we're representing the whole country right now.
Got the whole country. It's a Scott Goyette sandwich. So Darlene,
you're on Goyette sandwich. I like it.
I'm sure that's not the first time you've heard that, right?
It's the first time I heard it today.
Today, well, at least today. I mean, it's a slow day for Scott. It must be a slow
day. You married, we're boring, we're old. We just deal with it. We just do what we can do.
Exactly, man. Exactly. Cool. What's up, Brenda? Good to see you here. How's your week been going, man? I know we talked here and there, but how's things for you this week?
It's good. It's good. It's man, there's so much opportunity, when people are looking at the problems of COVID and everything that we're doing. And I love the opportunity to pivot from one thing to the next, which you and I have spoken about. And how do we figure out, we've got all these things going on that we might perceive as negative, but there's a spin on everything, and you can make lemonade out of lemons quite easily. And that's what we've been doing. So that's what I'm doing.
No, I love that, man. I mean, it's been a tough week for a lot of people, including myself. And I think, it's easy to look at the negativity or look at the bad parts of situations. But even today, when I was walking, I was in pain. I'm like, what can I find? Where can I find gratitude in this situation? It's like, I'm outside. It's beautiful. It's not the end of the world. I'm not in a wheelchair. I'm not walking with a cane. It's not permanent. It's temporary. I'm listening to my podcast. I'm, saying hi to people. It was like all these things, but I was just like, for about 2 minutes, I was just like, why me? And this is frustrating. I'm like, wait, Chris, it's really a beautiful day outside. Don't get caught in the mud when you should be looking up at the stars.
1,000%. And it's funny, I've got friends in wheelchairs. I got friends who are blind. I got friends who are deaf. And even in listening to you say that, they're probably hearing it going, but that's not even that big deal. Once you overcome it, it's not a big deal. Like every time we have something that's a barrier and we address it and we're aware of it, we accept it, man, there's so much beyond that. And so whatever your thing is, and the other thing I want when we're talking tonight, all right, because the person we're going to be talking about, I want you to think about this too. I don't care where you are at in your journey. You might think that your thing is the biggest thing in the world that you're trying to overcome, and you might think it's nothing. Don't judge your barriers or your obstacles, because here's the deal. They're all real. They're all true. Let's just figure out ways to overcome them together. And that's what we're going to be doing here tonight.
Absolutely. I love that, Scott. That's what we need most of in this world right now. Big time, big time. What's up, Glenda? Good to see you. Brian Keith. Love the patriotic colors, Christopher. Brian, that's right. I forgot I have the controls right here. Love the patriotic colors, Christopher. Larry says, hi, guys. What's up? And then, for Fernanda, well, I'm not even going to try that. McLaughlin, hello. What's happening? Thank you so much for being here tonight. We appreciate you being here. So yeah, let's get right into it, Scott. I'm super excited about this. He's been a guest on your show, so I will allow you the honors to introduce our beloved guest tonight.
So he's a good friend of mine, super, super intelligent person. And when I define intelligence, many people might be intelligent as far as, the way we think, ego smarts. But the thing that impresses me most about our guest tonight is he is somebody who has what I always called heart smarts. He's somebody who truly finds the way to center himself and connect in what really matters. He's always able to connect and center. And he's done that through some really difficult circumstances. And so again, not to judge the obstacle, but some that might seem bigger than others for many. And many of you might have seen him on The Confession Killer in Netflix. He was the district attorney of Waco at that time. Now he is an attorney in Waco, also has offices in Austin, Texas. But way more importantly than that, he is a very heart-centered person, and he's somebody that you will all connect with, I promise you. Welcome, my good friend, Vic Feazell.
Hi,
Vic.
Hey, brother. How are you?
Welcome to Friday Night Live. Good to see you, man. Good to see you. I've done a lot of research on you. I've been really super excited to meet you here virtually. So welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm good, Christopher. Thank you for having me on tonight.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, we just when Scott told me about having you on as a guest, I said that was perfect because when I listened to your interviews, I was just really intrigued. And what's really funny about this, my wife is watching. I think I messaged that for you before. Yeah. She's really into the murder crimes and solving that. And she's really not usually interested in who my guests are for Friday nights or for any of my shows. And I said, hey, do you know something about the Confession Killer? Henry Lee Lucas and da-da-da-da. And she's like, yeah, what's that? And I was like, yeah. I said, well, he's going to be a guest on the show. And so tonight my wife is watching. So thank you, Vic. My wife is watching because of everything that you have gone through. And we're excited to dive into the subjects tonight and help some of our viewers here change their mindset and their perceptions about the struggles and things that they go through in life. Are you game?
Tell your wife I said thank you for watching The Confession Killer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I watched it too.
I'm sorry?
I said I watched it too, man. It was really intense and really amazing, just the overall situation of your life. But we're going to talk about all sorts of different aspects. But Scott, why don't you lead off with the question?
So let's start first and foremost, Vic. You've been through so much. You've been through so much there. And like we said, obstacles are obstacles. They're all real. When we have an obstacle in our life, yours might be some things that at the time might have been insurmountable, but you had some amazing tools that you used, and you and I have shared those. So let's talk a tiny bit about what led you up to where you are today using those tools. I want to come back another show and I want to talk all about the stuff from The Confession Killer. But more important, I just want to tell us a little bit about who Vic Feazell is, what brought you to a space today that you're so resilient. And let's talk about a couple of those tools, and let's start sharing tools with our audience today, because everybody's going through some struggles right now. And I know that people want that outcome of what you've received from all this, things that you've been through and the struggles.
Beautiful.
I have been through a lot. I've been through things that would put a lot of people down for good. But I've been through a lot less than some other people who have really thrived as well, because they had the tools and they knew how to use those tools. And the first tool that I can think of is just simple awareness. Being able to look at yourself, judge what your own motivations are. What is my intent? Am I coming from a place of purity? Am I coming from a place of honesty? So that's a really good fallback. If you have a moral compass, everything else it'll just work out. It'll eventually work out. Another tool, and I was so fortunate, Christopher, to have this tool. I learned this quite by accident when I was 5 years old. I grew up very poor. My dad was a self-educated Southern Baptist preacher. And the poverty consciousness was just taught to me. And I remember sitting on the back steps one day when I was only 5 and praying, God, help me out here. What can I do? I'm just a kid and I don't even have any toys. And it was not like I heard words, but since then I've gotten used to that feeling in my head when I know I'm being spoken to by a higher power. He says, I'm going to give you 3 gifts. You use these gifts and they're free. The first one was walking. It's free. And I started walking at age 5, just as a matter of course, every day going out and walking. The second one was water. I drink a lot of water. It keeps me hydrated and it keeps the toxins out. The third thing was breath. Play with your breath. Think about your breath. Here I am 5 years old and I'm sitting there on the steps and I start breathing. I'm counting my inhales. I'm counting my exhales. And after a little while, I realize I'm in a different space. Everything was calm. All the yelling and screaming that I had heard in the house that had driven me out to the back steps in the first place was gone. You know, it was still in there, but in my head it was gone. And I felt this real centeredness and this real peace. And I learned through the inhale and the exhale how to bring together the two parts, make it more of a non-dualistic system. Bring together the left brain and the right brain and become centered so that we can stay calm and peaceful, even when everything around us seems to be falling apart. And that was a lesson that worked well for me for the rest of my life up to now, and it's still working. It got me through high school. It got me through studying for the LSAT to get into law school. It helped me pass the bar. And it gave me a sense of calm and centeredness. That day I was surrounded by 20 FBI agents and marched off in handcuffs. And I remember, and you can go back and look at the old videotape of when they were coming up to my car and I'm getting out of the car and I take this centering breath and you can see it. And I just get centered right there. And even though there were 20 of them arresting me, I was the guy in control because I was centered. I had the universe working for me. And we bring everything together and unify it within ourselves. Now, I learned other tools after that, Scott, and we've talked about this, that kept me going. And that next tool was forgiveness. Mm-hmm. I wasn't spoken on the back steps on the back steps about that. I learned that later. But I really had to embrace the idea of radical forgiveness because what had happened to me, even though I was able to control the situation, even though I came out of it well, when you're looking at 80 years, 80 federal years, that's years without parole. That can create a lot of post-traumatic stress syndrome, you know?
Just a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
So did you have events in your life that preceded this, that prepared you for this? Like, did you go through some traumatic events where you learned to incorporate the water, the walking, and the breathing to get you through those experiences as well? Or was this situation where you practiced it the most?
No, I practiced it through my life because, like I said, I grew up in poverty, out in the country. I was the first person in my family to ever graduate from high school. I was the first person in my family to ever go to college. I remember the first time I mentioned to my mother, you know, Mom, I'm thinking about trying to figure out how to go to college. And she laughed at me. She said, people like us don't go to college. They will laugh at you at a college. And living with my mother was quite an experience where I had to practice breathing and practice meditation because my mother was bipolar. And it was a very difficult situation for me and my mother. And my dad loved her, and I have a wonderful, sweet dad. Some of the best lessons in my life I learned from him. But he was afraid of her too, you know? Plus, back then, people didn't get divorced. It was like, do the best you can, try to get along with Mom, do the best you can. So the breathing, the meditation got me through that. Then it got me through the poverty of working hard, helping support my family, even when I was in high school. And then through deciding to go to college. And then through several very hotly contested political races when I decided to get into politics right out of law school. So, oh yeah, everything was building up to this until that big event where I was surrounded by the FBI agents, the Texas Rangers, the state police, marched off in handcuffs. The media was told that the only time I would be able to see my little boy would be through a thick glass in Leavenworth. And it was all because I pulled the mask off the Texas Rangers. You know, I exposed the Henry Lee Lucas confession hoax. And that's what they talk about in The Confession Killer. But that was the hardest. That's the hardest thing I've ever been through, was that arrest. They arrested me 6 weeks before the election. I was running for re-election. Thank God I still won. I just love the people of Mclennan County for seeing through the BS and re-electing me. But that took a lot of staying centered, staying in control of the situation, and not trying to control things, but not letting things control you, not getting into knee-jerk reactions, but always taking that breath, allowing that space for that synapse between the impulse and the action. Oh, it would have been so easy to say stupid things. It would have been so easy to act out in a way that would have been bad for me. But thankfully, through the breath and staying centered, meditating, and believing in a higher power, that I was able to overcome it and come out on top, be found not guilty. 30 years later, all those confessions, yeah, praise God. 30 years later, all those confessions, now they're finding the real killers through DNA. And not only that, but I turned around and I sued all those people and ended up getting the largest libel verdict in the history of the United States. It put me in the Guinness Book in 1992. Now I don't have any of that money left because they said, well, he might have gotten off the hook, but we're not going to let him keep it. So they got the IRS to change the tax code and make it retroactive 5 years, just so they could scoop me up in their net and take away most of what I hadn't already spent. Because I tell you, I was running around buying cars for people like I was Elvis. Had
$58 million. I mean, yeah.
Let me pay your house off for you. You know, I was doing stuff like that. And then all of a sudden get hit with this huge tax bill. And none of those gifts were tax deductible. So that's why I'm still practicing law today. That plus I love practicing law. And I love my staff. I have a lot of people that depend on me for their income. So I miss being in court. That's the hardest thing about this pandemic. It makes me feel like a dinosaur. I'm a trial lawyer. I go in front of a jury. Well, I haven't even been in a courthouse since February.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's difficult. They keep talking about, well, maybe we'll have a trial in August. Maybe we'll have a trial in September. And they'll schedule one. And then they put it off. Now they have one scheduled for November. But I guarantee you it's not going to go either.
Probably not.
No.
During those times when you were staying centered, were you able to help other people in your family and your direct community with your friends and everybody stay centered as well? Or were they like just going crazy, or were your techniques able to help them as well through such an experience?
I think I was able to help my core, those close to me, to stay centered, because, you know, when you're under attack, you can make some mistakes. You act too quickly. I was getting really bad advice from a lot of people who were very insistent that I take it, and their intentions were very good. Who is it? One of the country western singers. I hear tell the road to hell is paved with good intentions. A lot of good intended people, but because I would not just jump on anything and act, I'd say, no, let's take a breath. Let's think about this. Let's sleep on it. And it kept me from walking into some traps that the FBI had laid for me. It helped me win my re-election. It helped me not step into political traps that my opponents had laid for me. I had two opponents in that second election, both of them supported by the same people, friends of the Texas Rangers. Yeah. And people who were friends with Colonel Jim Adams, who was head of the state police back then. former deputy director of the FBI under J. Edgar Hoover. Really scary dude. Really scary.
So let's talk about, I love the fact of what you're saying is you're talking about responding, take a deep breath and respond versus react. And that's something Chris and I talk about quite a bit. And, a lot of the people who have been on the show, the things that I really admire about people are those who are able to take that deep breath and really process the response versus a knee-jerk reaction, which comes from emotion. You and I have had some great talks about how to not let emotion own you, elevate yourself to a higher vibration, how that actually will extend, like what Chris was asking, when our vibration is raised, that goes out to others. Like we literally change the vibration of the universe. Let's talk to our listeners about how can we elevate, how can we choose and respond versus react? Because listen, right now in COVID, it's a very easy time to be super reactionary. We've got fear being thrown all over the place. A lot of people are angry. A lot of people are frustrated. How do we move from that emotion, sit in this space of complete, indifference and just respond? Because I know we practice it. Let's talk about how that they can do it.
How do we elevate?
Mm-hmm.
Think about the old hot air balloons. That was our first experience with flight as human beings. And they put that hot air in that balloon and get it all hot to where it would start to lift off. But before we lift off, it'd have to start throwing off the sandbags, getting rid of the weight, getting rid of our baggage. That's how we elevate ourselves. Not by doing something to strive to get up, but by letting go of all the BS that's holding us down.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about surrender and about faith. It takes faith in order to surrender. The reason we don't surrender is because the things we're holding on to are so comfortable to us. We're used to them. We're attached to them. They're familiar, even if they're bad for us, even if they're addictive, even if they're dysfunctional, even if it's breaking us apart, at least it's familiar. I know it. We don't really fear the unknown. How do you fear something you don't even know? We fear the loss of the known. Mm-hmm. And in order to elevate ourselves, we've got to have faith instead of fear. Faith to overcome the fear so that we can let go of our resentments, let go of our attachments, let go of all those negative things that are holding us down. And then that's when we begin to elevate and to go up.
So how do we specifically do that? Because this is where I see a lot of confusion. A lot of times I see people potentially maybe misrepresent religion. And so I'm listening to you use the word faith or surrender. And oftentimes, I agree with 1,000%. I mean, you and I have done all the acronyms, the let go of the tree, float on the river, we've got them all. So I buy in 1,000% in the surrender. But what about when somebody is literally looking at their religion or a mindset as the comfort? So they're literally hanging on to that tree being the religion and forgetting the doctrine, forgetting the message. And we see that right now in our country. So let's really talk about what surrender means, because the second we cling on to anything, whether it's a label, a concept or whatever, and we don't just free fall in trust that we are enough, that we are love, that we will be okay, anything that we attach to is an attachment. And I mean anything. So let's talk about that, because so many times I listen to people say, I'm faithful and that's why I'm going to be okay. And I'm like, you are not faithful. You're actually just full of crap. You think you're faithful. So let's talk about what that really means, because there's opaque words and there's transparent words. Faith is a very opaque word. It's not transparent. Love, very opaque. God, very opaque. Let's make faith a little more transparent for our listener.
Okay. Well, the word faith may be a little opaque, but we know what fear is.
Boom.
Everybody can relate to fear. That's what keeps politics going, is fear. Are you guys still with me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just,
Wait, wait,
Just wanted to emphasize the point you were about to make.
yeah,
so
if you're ever, we can tell something good's coming. You know, he
Yep.
never does that to
Boom.
me because he doesn't care enough. He likes you. Accept it. Oh, he just gave me one too.
Hey, say something intelligent, Scott.
No, it's all good. Bring him back. Bring back some Vic.
Well, we know what fear is. You know, fear is what they could put on that bumper sticker up there to get you, like that. Fear of those Facebook memes that make you want to just jump in and start typing something negative. Well, faith is the opposite of fear. I knew this old Assembly of God preacher back when I was a teenager. And he used to say, faith and fear cannot live in the same house. When fear comes in the front door, faith will run out the back. But when faith comes in the front door, fear runs out the back. And you know what? The choice is yours, who you let into your house. You're going to let faith in, you're going to let fear in. And it takes an exercise in faith to let faith in. You got to see if it works. If it doesn't work, don't do it. But I think if you let faith in the front door, you'll start seeing that it works. When you let go of the fear, when you start doing the deep breathing, I do the 5 counts in, 5 counts out. Breathe deep, deep breath. Inhale, exhale to release the stress. That's my friend MC Yogi. I'm going to hook you up.
Mm-hmm. He's going to be on with us. I know. We're going to get him.
He's fabulous. He's fabulous. But it's like what he says. We come to realize that which we all seek is the same. Happiness and peace.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're all after the same thing. So what we have to do is make faith a little less opaque, make it more transparent so that we realize that it is a tool that will work in our lives. Breathing and letting go of that fear so that then the universe can start conspiring with you to make things happen so that you don't have to work so hard. People are under so much stress today. And it's partly because we're taught all our lives the early bird gets the worm. That fiddling grasshopper is going to die in the winter. You know, you got to work harder. You got to do more. You're not doing enough. You need a day timer. You need a list, you know? No, you don't. You need to relax. You need to relax. You need to trust the universe. You need to put the intention out there and then just put one foot in front of the other and step boldly into the fog. You don't need to know where you're going. You just need to put one foot in front of the other and trust that you're going to get there. Now, going through my thing, I knew all along that it was a possibility that I'd be found guilty. There was a possibility I'd go to a federal pen for 80 years. But I had the faith that even if that happened, that I could say with Job from the Old Testament, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. Something bigger and better will come out of this. Just like Joseph, the favorite and next to the youngest son of Abraham. Brothers were jealous of him. They toss him into a pit. They have him sold into slavery. He goes into Egypt and he's in prison, man. But he makes it up to second in command of all of Egypt and ends up saving all of his brothers when they're about to die of starvation. So I believe that whatever happens, it's divine order. And I'm not going to lose my faith just because something doesn't happen that's on my outline the way I have it envisioned.
Wow, that's powerful.
When we become unhappy, when we're not happy, it's just because things aren't going the way we think they ought to go. Well, we're not really in control, are we? How do we know how things ought to go? How do we know what divine order is? Sometimes what we might think is the worst thing that could happen ends up in retrospect being the best thing that could happen.
I can attest to that.
So really, when it gets right down to it, the worst thing in our lives, the thing that causes us the most pain is fear. It's not what happened yesterday that's over. It's not what might happen tomorrow. That hasn't come yet. Right now is what's real. Stay in the now. Like Ram Dass said, stay in the here and now. And breathe and experience that, and just trust. And let go of the resentments. Let go of the hate. Quit thinking that somebody else might get your biscuit. So what? There's another biscuit on that tray with your name on it, you know?
Big time.
I love it.
Big time. Go ahead, Scott.
I was going to say, Vic, one of the things that, I'm listening to that, and, I always start creating pictures in my mind, and I'm seeing a couple things. One, I'm visualizing, being in prison. I just kind of went with you and I sat there, like mentally, I was sitting with you, and the awareness, the faith, the understanding that I am source. I'm connected to source. I'm a perspective point to source. Once I know that and believe that, and I know I'm an eternal being, my energy is too powerful to squelch. It's just too powerful. And once you're aware of that, you're okay. And the other thing I really love, everyone always says love is the opposite of fear and love. I like when you said faith, and what I saw there was faith as being the gatekeeper or the window to love. And so I visualize when you're saying you make the choice what you allow in. So when faith comes in, even though I'm still a little bit scared, I can look through that window, or I can look through that window of faith, and I can see love, and I know that's truth. And so even though fear is sitting there pulling at me, I'm like, love is right there. So you can do everything that you want. I'm going to use you as a springboard to find love, because I know it's real. And I saw that very clearly, and I loved what you did, because you made me, questioning, the word being opaque versus transparent. I really received that well, and I know our listeners did too. That was beautiful. It was really nice.
Thanks.
So, Chris, were you going to say something? You got?
Oh yeah, I was.
There's so much good stuff here.
Yeah, I know. No, seriously, it really is. When you said before all of this happened, you already had the tools in place for yourself to get through it. My question to you is now, retrospectively, with everything that's happened, the Netflix series, everything, the dust is settled and you're back into your regular life and everything, what additional aspects of life or intuition or anything else did you learn from going through that process with your wife, with your son, with everybody else? The excitement's there, the adrenaline's flowing, all of a sudden now this kind of goes by the wayside. What other impacts were there in your life? And if you feel comfortable talking about them, what were some of the ones that were unexpected that you were able to work through?
We're learning lessons every day. And when we stop learning, it's just because we're dead, and from my belief, we're going to come back and keep learning because the spirit is eternal.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, my lessons were just not to give in to the fear. My lesson was just being able to survive, to be able to overcome what looked like insurmountable odds, both legally, professionally, politically. But the lessons I learned later were the lessons you learn when you get a lot of success, because success can be a bad thing too. Success can lead straight to failure. It can start the spiral down. So once I was no longer looking at 80 years, once I had money in the bank, then I had to start dealing with things like pride, with hate, resentment. And I had to learn about forgiveness. I remember the night. I woke up around 3 a.m. I believe we process things subconsciously all the time, because I had not been thinking about this consciously. But it was 2:30, 3 a.m, and I had to roll out of bed onto my knees. My wife and I were separated by then, so I was living in that big house by myself because we were both suffering from PTSD. And I had been willing to get into therapy, but she wasn't. And so it eventually ended in us separating. And I was in that big house by myself, and I remember rolling out onto my knees at 2:33 a.m. and knowing that I had to start calling people by name and forgiving them right then and there. because I had had fantasies about, well, someday when all this falls apart and anarchy's in the streets, the last thing they're going to see is my foot on their neck before I put a bullet in their head for getting up there and lying about me. You know, I had just been, ooh, you know, even though I had the meditation skills, even though I had the skills to stay centered, when you find yourself in the heat of battle like that, and it's one thing after another, faster than you can deal with, over and over, day after day, for like 3 years in a row, I lost some of the lessons I learned earlier as a kid, which was from my dad, the softness of heart and the forgiveness and the loving everybody. So I cried until the carpet was wet and called every one of them, every FBI agent, every person that got on that stand and lied about me because their arms had been twisted. See, the only people that testified against me were people that the government made a tax case against and then offered them immunity, civil and criminal, if they testify against me. Well, you know, these guys didn't want to go to the pen, and I don't blame them. And thankfully, they were not very good witnesses for the government. You could tell they were being forced to say what they were saying. They were not good witnesses. And they left some good doors open for me and my lawyer, Gary Richardson, that we were able to just walk through, man. Gary had a good saying. I love Gary Richardson. He was my lawyer. And but he'll mix his metaphors pretty bad sometimes. And what he kept telling the jury about those witnesses is, if you hold a fish out of water long enough, it'll say anything you want it to.
Sounds like a Yogi Berra kind of thing, you know? Like, there you go. Yeah, it makes sense.
But the jury got the message. These fish have been held out of water long enough. And they were just saying what the government wanted them to say. And so I called all those men by name as well. Even the U.S. attorney who had committed perjury in front of the grand jury. And we have the transcripts that prove it, you know, but, you know, the fox is not going to punish the fox for breaking into the hen house, you know. Mm-hmm. So nothing ever happened to any of those people other than I got that big verdict and they got embarrassed and they still were in denial. I mean, it's weird. They all go to the same school up there in Quantico and learn how if you're going to be accused of something, you accuse the other person of it first, because the first lie usually wins. And they use a 3-pronged technique: disinformation, intimidation, isolation. They put out lies about you, they intimidate you, and then they intimidate your friends so that you become isolated. So you're just out there by yourself. That's why most federal defendants end up pleading guilty, because by the time they're to the courthouse, they got no friends left. They've all been subpoenaed to the grand jury. They've all had their bank accounts looked at. They've all been threatened. So you're totally isolated, and all these lies have been put out there. And I'm just so grateful for the voters in Mclennan County for seeing through that BS and reelecting me under indictment. Here I was prosecuting cases in court that I wasn't even qualified to serve on the jury because I was under indictment.
Crazy.
It was crazy. But yeah, I had to learn some of the more subtle things, like getting over pride, getting over hubris, and forgiving. And the forgiving was the big one. Yeah.
How do you do that? I mean, you know, I love the fact that you're talking about like literally calling them out by name. And that's such an amazing, beautiful technique, because just to say I forgive it's very not in the moment, it's very haphazard. But to sit and say a person's name, say like, you know, that, you know, person in the Rangers, speak that name and say, I forgive you, knowing that you could have spent the only existence you truly understand in this moment, in this life, you could have spent that in a prison because of this person. So that's a pretty crazy thing to think that you just said, I forgive you. And I understand that that's the detachment from the energy from that person. Talk about what that means, because I can guarantee you there's multiple people listening right now who literally, if they forgave themselves and or somebody else, would drop so much of that baggage instantaneously and lift up in that vibration. And we know what happens, Vic, when you raise up in that vibration, all those people that we've always wished we could connect to, and we're like, why am I not here? They show up like angels. So let's talk about how some of these people can drop some of that baggage, connect with those angels, and be part of a higher vibration starting today.
How do we elevate? Remember the hot air balloon.
I'm with you. I want more info.
We got to let go of the baggage. And you can forgive the same way that you can get into love. Faith is the gateway. Faith is the way to do it. And I realize that by me holding these grudges, by me thinking and fantasizing about someday getting even, by me getting angry whenever I'd hear one of these names, that was hurting me. It wasn't hurting them. They didn't even know I felt that way. They probably weren't even thinking about me, but it was hurting me. Now, you mentioned religion before, and I grew up in the church, but I'm not much for religion. I outgrew that, thank God. A lot of people need religion, and a lot of people need church, and I'm all for that. But I like the teachings of the original teachers, whether it's Jesus or Buddha or whomever. The original teachers, not the people who later decide to make a business out of it. Yep. That's the problem with religion.
Well, that's where you and I click 1,000%. Anytime we're talking, we're all about, I want to hear the teacher. I want to be able to personally interpret, and I want to sit back and say, how can I apply these lessons to my life? And that's it. And I don't want to sit here and say, I follow you or follow you. I want the wisdom. I want to connect and double check that wisdom when I connect to source, and I want to take ownership of it. I don't want to sit here and say, I follow this. Because I mean, anytime we get new info, there might be new info that makes this less true than today. You know, you've got to keep elevating. So keep going. I'm with you.
Yeah. So just about every culture, every religion has a creation story. And the creator always just kind of speaks the creation into existence. And down on my knees that night, I realized that I could forgive if I would just speak it. I couldn't just in my head say I forgive, or I'm going to forgive, or I got to let this go. No, it had to be, Jim Adams, I forgive you for lying about me. I forgive you for being so angry at me that you wanted to lock me up for 80 years, even though I had done nothing wrong. And then I called off all of his deputies. Then I called off the men who testified against me. And I told them that I understood, and I forgive you. And when I got through, it took me maybe an hour and a half of crying and name calling. And when I finally got through, wow, I was so much lighter. Not just from the tears I had cried, I mean from the emotions I had let go of and the baggage that I had let go of. And I felt my vibration begin to rise from that.
What did you feel about those people before?
Before?
Yeah, I mean, so you gave them forgiveness. Did you have hatred, vengeance? What kind of emotions were going through your mind? And also, does that because I wrote down two names that I was going to ask you about, and you said Jim Adams was one of them. The other one was Botwell. You know, how do those conversations go too? I mean, I can't imagine them going, wait a minute, what? You forgive me after I just really almost tried to make your life a pure living hell and ruin your family and ruin everything about you. What was that response like?
Well, don't get me wrong. I didn't call him on the phone and tell him I forgave him. I didn't drive up and see him. I forgave him on the floor in my bedroom.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. This is speaking to the universe.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought he got on the phone and was like, hey, okay.
No, I didn't call Jim Adams and say, hey, Jim Adams.
Okay. I was misunderstanding, so I'm glad we got that clarified.
Jim, it's 2 a.m. This is Vic Feazell. I just wanted to put face.
Well, would you consider doing that? Have you considered actually doing that, taking that, since you felt so much lighter doing it just by yourself? Have you considered extending that out to those individuals and making that connection?
No, I don't think it's necessary. And I don't think I need to open myself up to whatever baggage they may have. True. That's between them and God. Our business is over. They tried to lock me up. It didn't work. The Lucas confessions, they're being solved now. They're getting the real murderers. 30 years later, the real killer is being locked up.
A lot of that's happening.
No.
Golden State Killer. I mean, look at that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, honey. Thank you for that. She's gonna be like, he only knew that because of me.
Yeah, I know about that. That's fabulous.
So I love where you're going with that there, Vic, because a lot of people feel like they have to, and Chris's question was perfect. A lot of people feel like you have to go say, hey, I forgive you to the person. And literally what it is, and I love what you used there with the creator, concept. A creator speaks to the universe and says, so be it, creation formed, like you create from the speak. I mean, we know the words are so powerful. And that's the thing. Like when you first told me that, I was like, wow, because so many of us will go, all right, I forgive. And you're kind of doing it in your head and you're just going through this, it's fluffy BS.
Yeah.
To sit there and literally speak to the universe and know that these words are going to go on and live into the universe and say, I forgive you. That's insanely powerful. I can only visualize the tears because I'm thinking of certain people who have hurt me in some capacity and saying that to them. And I'm thinking how hard that is. If someone almost took my entire life away, for me to say that, whew, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Super powerful.
Yeah. But you're not doing it for them.
100%.
For you.
Yeah.
For you. Forgiveness really is a very selfish act because it sets you free. It doesn't do anything for the guy you're forgiving, but it sets you free. You're not carrying that anymore. And I didn't want to be karmically tied to any of these guys because I've done a lot of reading in not only in Christian religion, but in Hinduism and Buddhism. And I didn't want to be karmically tied to these guys so that I would end up having to do this dance with them again in another lifetime.
That's beautiful.
I want to be free of it.
Say that again.
Free of it. Now, speaking is so very, very, very important. There are two kinds of confession. And I'm not talking about like going into the church and talking through some wicker to a priest. There's positive confession and there's negative confession. Positive confession is like affirmations or to say, I love and I believe and I feel and I forgive. Negative confession can be something as simple as, oh, I think I'm getting a cold, or, oh man, I'm depressed. Things such as that. That's negative confession. You don't want to ever own anything with your words. Don't put your stamp of ownership on anything with your words, whether it's illness or whatever. Instead of saying, oh, I'm depressed. No, you're not. You might be feeling depressed. If you say you are depressed, then you're owning it, And so I had to forgive those guys for my own sanity and for my own peace and for my own freedom.
That is beautiful. And in continuation of that forgiveness, I can't help but ask, and thinking about your family situation, and you mentioned that you and your wife were separated, and you mentioned about your son earlier. How old was he when this was happening, and how old is he now, and what kind of impact has that had on him? Or has he developed the same frame of mind that you have as far as forgiveness and being able to follow in Dad's footsteps of what it is that you set the example to be?
He was working on it. The day I was arrested, they started investigating me when my son was only about 2 years old. We tried to hide it from him that it was going on. We had him in Montessori school. And I remember one time when he was about 3, I was driving him to school. And he wasn't his usual talkative self, because he could read even back then. He'd be reading the signs and just blabbering all the time. Beautiful, intelligent, sweet kid. but his little lip was out and he looked sad. And I said, Craig, what's wrong, buddy? And he looked at me and his lip quivered and he said, Daddy, I don't want you to go to jail. He knew. Age 3, he knew. It was everything we had done to try to keep it from him. But he knew what was going on. He was 4 when I was arrested. Not only did 20 FBI agents surround me in my car at the parking lot at the courthouse, 20 more converged on my home. Matter of fact, they knew that it was custom on that day for my wife, because once a week she would take my son to his favorite little pancake restaurant and they'd have breakfast out. And that's what they were doing that day. And the FBI waited for her to leave the house with him and they followed her to the restaurant. They waited for her to go inside. They waited for her to order. Greg Rampton, one of the names I called and forgave, FBI agent Greg Rampton. And Google his name sometime. What a character. He was involved in Ruby Ridge. He was a good friend of Karl Rove. Really a
Greg
deep
Rampton?
Greg Giorgi Rampton, Rampton. Really a deep state sort of black ops sort of guy. Political kind of stuff. The FBI says we don't fight political battles. Well, that's BS. They do. They absolutely do. But Greg Rampton was in that restaurant and waited for their food to be served, and he radioed outside, and that's when the rest of them came in and took my wife and the little boy away from the restaurant. He wanted to stay and eat his pancakes, and they said, no, come with us. And then they get to her car, and he's used to sitting in the front seat with Mom, and they wouldn't let him. They put him in the back seat with an FBI agent, and he was seeing all the guns. And he started having nightmares after that the men with guns were going to come back. I was 6. He was 6 before I was found not guilty. That's how long it took. But when he was still 5, almost 6, when his mother said, man, I was sure I bought a bottle of NyQuil. I'm going to have to buy another bottle of NyQuil, because she would keep a bottle around for colds and things like that. She found that empty bottle of NyQuil in his room. He had been self-medicating to help himself sleep. 5 years old, Chris.
Whoa, you got it.
So we took him to a psychologist, a really good child psychologist. And she would have him draw pictures of what he would dream about and what he was afraid of. And it was always, this icky black stick drawings of men with guns. And he was always afraid of the men with guns. And he wanted a gun so he could protect himself. Well, his psychologist had us buy him a little plastic toy gun, thinking that might help him some. But he was in and out of rehab his whole life. And last year he died of a heroin overdose. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I did not know that.
Yeah, it's all right.
Wow. I did not know that. Wow.
He was a really smart boy. He was sweet. For a while, he worked for me in my law office. He was one of the best legal assistants I ever had, because he's so computer literate. Plus, he could speak Spanish as well as a native. He could talk to someone from Mexico for 5 minutes or less and tell them which part of the country they grew up in, because he knew the local dialects and then the local slang and the local pronunciations. He had lived down there for quite a few years too. After his mom and I divorced, she moved to Acapulco and took him there. So yeah, he saw The Confession Killer, and he wrote me the sweetest email about it. I read it on my podcast about a week after he died. And that was the last communication I had from him, because I wrote him back after that email, and I didn't hear, and I didn't hear. And then 4 days later, he was dead. They found him in a hotel, dead from a heroin overdose. He had been working on a Mexican soap opera in Acapulco. He was quite an adventurous, good-looking young man too. He had become a Acapulco cliff diver.
Wow.
Yeah, he's one of the only Anglos that ever did that, because
It's high. It's legit.
It really is. And contrary to the movies, Elvis never did that. The stand-in, but he did. And then Greg had gotten this part on a Mexican soap opera. And it was just a little walk-on part at first, but then it became reoccurring with some lines, and he was having fun, and they liked him so much that they had him dye his hair black so that he could come back the next season as the evil twin brother.
That's awesome.
But before the next season started, he died. Yeah.
I wish I met him.
He was a really, really sweet boy. Loved everyone. I loved animals. A vegetarian, but he used that heroin, man. And his mom and I both dated back to the NyQuil and the men with guns. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Really, I honestly didn't know that. I feel like a dick for asking that now, but thank you so much for sharing that with us, because that's what this show's about, Vic. It really is about getting to the rawness of who we are and the experiences that we go through, because that's what our viewers are going through. Our viewers have lost kids. Our viewers, trust me, I've talked to lots of them. They've had, horrible thoughts about themselves and situations like that. So thank you so much for sharing that with us, because that can help heal those that are watching, and myself as well.
That's true.
So thank you so much for sharing that.
That's another situation where I had to sit with myself and meditate and pray.
Oh yeah.
And I had to forgive myself for my shortcomings as a father. I had to forgive him for his shortcomings as a son, and for his use of heroin, and for not being able to get past it, even though his mom and I sent him to 5 different expensive rehab centers. One of them said, never bring him back. He got 2 of our staff members addicted. Oh, he was a very persuasive young man.
He was a leader.
In his own right. Yeah.
He was. And so I had to learn a lot from that too. And that's something that I had to let go. I loved him, and I remember him as a beautiful child, and I remember him as a beautiful young man. I would go to Mexico, and he would be my tour guide. We drove that whole country, zigzagged that whole country together. And but I still don't understand it. But we don't have to understand everything.
Well, you said something, Vic, earlier that really ties a lot of this together, and you said it so eloquently. You said one of the reasons you made a point to have that forgiveness and speak it was so that you weren't karmically connected, so that ended now. So those lessons, they're not going to continue. And so you made a very conscious choice, and we talk about it all the time. We have choices in this life for whatever reason. And this is something that we have to understand. They're children, and they're our children. We brought them into this world. My daughter's my daughter, but she's still independently her own being, and so whatever she chooses, karmically to erase, what lessons she chooses to learn are up to her. And I shared something on Facebook a few weeks back that was very similar to what you're saying. It was somebody who had lost, a child to overdose. And they were talking about all the things that they did where they finally just said, I just have to let the outcome come. And I was like bawling reading. I don't even know the person. I'm sitting here just like, this just sounds like hell. Like I can't fathom it. And one of the things that I think is the hardest thing in humanity is to realize, and we're seeing it now in a country too, every single person has to do this on their own. It's their own journey. And there's nothing harder, I would assume, than looking at a child or a good friend or a spouse when you're saying to yourself, like, come on, like, I have 3 tools. I have 2 more tools. Chris is a tool. Scott is a tool. I swear to God, just take these tools. And they keep saying, no, I'm going to use this tool, this external tool in heroin, this external tool in cocaine. And we all know those are just numbing agents for the moment. And the way to get through this is to embrace the moment, feel it, work through it. And we just have to keep saying it collectively, because it's not easy.
And we have to respect the fact that even though this person may be our friend, our family member, our child, it's their journey.
Yep.
It's not our journey. We can't make it for them. We can't make them do certain things. We just can't. That's the moral. A lot of people just totally don't get this parable. And forgive me, and to all my atheist friends, but I talk about Jesus a lot because that's my background. That's what I know the most about. And I talk about the Buddha a lot too. But that's the moral behind the parable of the 7 virgins and the oil. And some of them, they were called to come to the wedding, and they take off with their lamps. And some of them, oh, I'm running out of oil. I don't have enough oil to get to, because it was nighttime, to get to the wedding, to get to the feast. Give me some of yours. And the others said, no, I can't. And so the ones that didn't have enough oil had to turn around and go home. They couldn't make the journey. Well, the moral there is that we have to do the work ourselves. We have to make our own oil. You know, we can't borrow oil from someone else. We can't borrow from someone else's aura or from someone else's faith. We have to do it ourselves. And so that's the journey we have to take. You know, Jesus said to us, the kingdom of heaven is within. But if that's true, why do we feel like crap so much? Why do I feel like total crap inside? Well, it's because in order to experience that kingdom of heaven that's within, because it's not out here somewhere. It's not past those pearly gates with gold streets so that we can pick up and toss coins at each other. No, it's spiritual. It's spiritual. And so if we're going to experience the kingdom of God within, we've got to let that crap come out. We got to give up those attachments. You know, and that's when the kingdom of God comes out. Jesus said, and this is why I know Jesus never meant to start some religion, you know. He said, go out there and teach other people what I've taught you. He didn't say build big churches and make people give a certain amount and burn people that don't believe the way you believe. No, Jesus said love. That's what Jesus said. And I don't think he ever meant to start some kind of crazy religion. He meant for us to love each other and to give up the BS. He pointed up to the temple on the hill and he said to his disciples, he says, you know, people go to that temple to worship God, to worship the Father. Now, and he was the first religious leader to call the Supreme Being Father, which changed everything, you know, that changed our whole idea of God, a father who loves us, a daddy. Jesus actually called him Abba, which doesn't mean father, it means daddy, you know? And Jesus said, before you've worshiped him in that temple up there, but I'm telling you, the time is coming, and for some of you, it's here now, where you will worship him in spirit and in truth. You don't need that building. You don't need the ritual. You need the love. You need the love and the faith and the positive confession. Yeah.
Amen. Amen. I want to, and that is so beautiful. And thank you for sharing that, because I mean, that's one thing that we all need to hear is the fact of, you know, stripping down, you know, the religious context into easy to understand tidbits of what it was, the original intent and purpose was for that before it got all exploded into being something that you could be a part-time advocate for when you felt like it. I want to shift gears just a little bit, because in these times, at the time of the taping of this program right now, we're going through COVID. We've got social injustice going on. We've got a lot of things going on. We've got the media doing a lot of, and I'm going to say this, fucked up shit. You know, given what you faced with Channel 8 News, and I can't remember the reporter's name, and seeing what's going on today, how does that make you feel? I mean, I sit there and I can't watch the news. I don't follow politics. It drives me fucking crazy. Scott and I have conversations about it all the time. But given where we're at in the news media now and what you proved, you know, hey, go out there spreading falsehoods and lies and all this other shit. What do you think about what you see now in the media? And what are some of the things that we can do, you know, to help turn that around, you know, as viewers, as people of society? How can we turn some of that stuff around? Because I imagine you would feel very passionate about what's going on right now, right?
I do, Chris. And what we need, besides, we need to change within first. But in order to perpetuate those changes and to help change things with the media, we need some laws. We don't need some new laws. We need some of our old laws brought back. Like the libel verdict that I won could never be won again. Because after I won my verdict, there was a whole slew of new laws that went through the Texas legislature and then went around the country to make sure that what I did could not happen again. Because our legislature is owned by the big corporations. Our Texas Supreme Court is owned by the big corporations. They don't represent the little guy. It's worse now than it used to be, because when Channel 8, after doing 11 episodes on me and it still looked like I was going to win, they decided to do an editorial. So they did a 2.5-minute opinion piece with their main anchor guy, recapping all 11 of those episodes and giving an opinion. Well, back then there was a law that if they editorialized against you, that's not news, that's opinion, and you get equal time. Now, the reason we didn't have Rush Limbaugh and that ilk of those talking, screaming heads that just divide this country is because prior to Ronald Reagan, we had a law that you could get equal time. So I wrote a letter to Channel 8 and I demanded my equal time. I quoted them the law and they had to give it to me. And I drove up there, I sat down on the stool, and in one take, I rebutted that 2.5 minutes. We're going to play that on the podcast and on YouTube. So, or it's on YouTube if you want to just Google Vic Feazell's response to Channel 8. It's like a 2-minute, 15-second thing. And I just sit down and in one take, there it is. And I answer everything they said. Well, you can't do that anymore. They got Ronald Reagan to, by executive order, get rid of the fairness doctrine. And that opened the door to all the screaming heads now on both sides. We got fringes on both sides that are causing trouble. And the fringe is so loud that the people in the middle don't have much of a voice anymore. It used to be, you know, that people of different opinions could be elected to office and still be friends with each other. We see pictures of these politicians, you know, from just 10, 20 years ago.
RBG and Scalia.
Yeah. And it's not that way now. And social media has made it even worse because it's given a platform to every nut who used to think he was the only nut who felt that way. And now they're coming together.
They're all coming together from basements, connected virtually. It's crazy.
Yeah. And they're saying things that they would never say to your face.
Yeah.
Never. It's just given us a license to be rude and mean and evil. And the only way to overcome that is with faith. Faith and love. Jesus said, don't resist evil. Don't even go fight it. Don't even go fight it. That's why on my podcast, I'm asking people, don't go out in the streets and protest. Don't throw rocks. Don't start fires. And if you're going to protest, Portland, Oregon's not really the place to do it, because that's not where the decision makers live. Go to New York and do it in front of Trump Tower, you know, and don't cause a ruckus. I would stand there like this, and with prayer hands. I believe in yoga, they call it Anjali, or Hindu greeting, Namaste. And Namaste, the TE at the end, means my greeting to you. But there's another greeting, which is Namaskar. Namaskar, which means unite, come together. And stand there and just Namaskar, bring together the two hemispheres. Bring together everything and just stand there and be quiet. What kind of protest would that be? We did a quiet protest, and just with our hands like this. And we have the technology now that when the police come in and run you off, you can have 5,000 people shopping in Nordstrom's or hanging out over here in the Starbucks and all that. And when they get the text, they move right in and take the place of the ones that were just taken away. We got the people, we got the technology, and we need to do it like Gandhi would have done it. Be the change that you want to see in the world, just like Gandhi. And Gandhi wouldn't have been throwing bricks. Gandhi wouldn't have been starting fires or breaking out a Saks Fifth Avenue window with a skateboard so you could loot. No. If you're going to bring change through protest, you've got to do it with integrity. You lose your integrity, it just gives them all the excuse they need to come in and break your head. And you get no sympathy. When you have your integrity and they come in and break your head, then you get the sympathy. And then the change comes. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to do it, and we've got to do it peacefully. And we need to bring our world together, because there's enough here for everybody. Now, the pandemic has made us all afraid. But we're also learning some very, very valuable lessons from it. So many things I used to think I needed, now I realize I don't need.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm finding a lot more time for quiet and a lot more time just to connect with people like this, where it's not such a superficial connection anymore. Mm-hmm. We have to make the time count. And because of things like this, only one person can talk at a time.
Well, we could all talk at the same time. We would just be all over each other. But,
we just sound like the actual world.
Yeah.
Going blah, 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 blah.
Yes, we would.
Well, Vic, we've been talking for an hour and 13 minutes, and I know Scott and I both could easily pick your brain and talk for another 3 hours. But Scott, final questions, thoughts for Vic, and also Vic, I want to get your final thoughts as well, because it's been a magnificent hour and 13 minutes talking about all sorts of amazing subjects: faith, forgiveness, how to overcome overwhelm, and everything else. So, what do you guys think? What are your final questions there, Scott? I know you got one.
So I've got thousands of questions, and I've got thousands of comments as well. So Vic, we've said it, but I want to simplify it as much as possible, because you brought up that while you were in prison, while they're trying to set you up, they're trying to force reaction, emotional reaction in you. That's exactly what's happening in the macro society today. The FBI is trying to do this. The powers that be are saying, hey, let's have the police push them. Let's get the right news channel out there. Let's have, somebody from a certain, opinion station coming out and saying stuff. They're provoking so that they go, see, told you so. This is a really difficult thing when we're sitting in a position of privilege to say to somebody who in Maslow's hierarchy of needs is barely hanging on to their emotional safety. They're sitting at one of these events and they're saying, see, I told you so. Look at their animals. Look, this is exactly how I expected it to be. I'm not so sure what we're supposed to tell them. Do we tell them to meditate? Do we tell them not to go to these events? Don't allow them to force that emotion. What do you tell them? Because I want to help people elevate as quickly as possible to get to a position where they can make responsible choices that don't allow for this setup to have somebody say, I told you so. I want that Gandhi-esque namaskar where we're sitting there and nothing but positive change can come from that. I want to help those who have lost hope, who are saying the only way is through fighting. And we say we might have another option. What's that option?
Great one.
The option is faith. The option is letting it go. And in the time of COVID, my advice is just stay the hell at home. You know, stay home. And when you watch something on TV, instead of just believing it, question it. No matter what you read, question it. Because it doesn't matter if you're seeing it on Fox or on CNN. It's slanted. Either side is slanting it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm having to make myself watch the other network that I usually don't watch now, every once in a while, just so I can get a little bit, I'm not going to call it balance, but a little bit of what the other side is looking at.
Understanding.
And I shouldn't have said other side, because I don't like to, I don't want to take sides. I don't think there is a side here.
Yep.
There's right and there's wrong. I'm going to vote. I'm going to vote my conscience. And I hope a whole lot of people will go and do.
Well, record numbers already. I mean, what, Scott, you saw what, a 5 or 6 hour line the first day you guys were able to vote?
I mean, Vic, you see it. I mean, in Austin right now, it's, what is it, 37,000 people yesterday, like 40,000 today, or it's 3 days in a row. It's been record setting, insane. Right. And we've got 97% of people who are able to vote registered, and they think we're going to get close to actually achieving those numbers that actual vote, which is insane. Like, if that happens, I mean, listen, whether we like what's going on right now in politics or not, at some point, we all have to have an awakening. And we know that the lessons we learn start with a tap, tap, Scott, you home. And I'm like, and then it's a quick punch to the face. And I'm like, I can take that. And eventually it's a freight train. And so if this is the freight train that we need to make change, then so be it. We welcome it. So here we are. We're ready to make the shift. I love the fact that you brought back faith again, because you're simplifying things so much. And if we look at faith as that window that we talked about to love, fear is going to be there. It's a real thing. But if I know I got this gatekeeper right here in faith that I can stay tight with, love's right with me. And love is going to be the answer to all of it. I mean, in case you guys haven't known, I got this thing called Go Love Now. That's my thing. So I'm all about love and faith. I'm with you. All about surrender. So,
and you know, guys, you know, I'm always quoting Jesus. He said that, well, maybe this was Paul. All things work together for the good of those that love the Lord. And I believe that. And I believe that all things work together for us. Even the death of my son. I don't get it yet, but I know that it's okay. I know that it's right. I hear people saying, our country has never been so divided. There's never been such blatant racism. But, you know, that's not really true. Our country has been divided before. And there has been a lot of racism in this country before. And for it to be at the surface now, well, maybe that's because it feels safer, because the guy at the top is saying that it's okay to be that way. But that doesn't mean it's just now coming into existence. That just means that pimple's finally getting a head on it. You know, and that's, we'll be able to squeeze it out.
That's a good analogy.
Opportunity instead of problem. Opportunity instead of problem. That's where we're at. And the quicker people understand that this perception of a problem is an amazing opportunity for growth. I mean, we could take our worst moment in life, and how we unwrap that and how we unpack that, the quicker, and I don't know about if quick is the right word, the more efficient and effective way that we learn to unpack that, as soon as we get to that answer, then we can utilize those tools that come from that. And Vic, I want you to listen to a friend of mine. We've got a podcast coming out that I think you will resonate with so much. She wrote a book called The Lemonade Diet, and it's how to, make lemonade from the lemons that life gives you. And she was talking about all the things that have happened in her life too, many similar but different things. But she was talking about how she made an effort to unpack these things quickly. She had her dad die when she was 16. She had her best friend die while she was, she just had a baby and she died of cancer. She's going through all these things. And she's telling me how she's watched the evolution of, if she didn't have this lesson, she wouldn't have done that. And that friend gave her this. And she's saying it. It sounds like this beautiful story, but that's from here. From the moment, it's devastating. But unless she gets out of that moment and unpacks it, none of this occurs. And when you see, and you're the same way, when you see what a beautiful, powerful, impactful, passionate, empathetic human being you both are, that doesn't occur without that acceptance and that understanding, and the word that you've nailed 50,000 times, faith. And so I'm hoping that everyone is listening to that word faith, redefining it and taking ownership of it, because it really sounds like one of the few magic words that's still out there. And I love it.
Well said, Scott. Well said.
It's what Paul said about faith. St. Paul said, faith is the substance of the things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And just like that forgiveness, it wasn't seen, it wasn't there. But because of the faith, it could be spoken into existence. We can speak our prosperity into existence. We can speak our health into existence. Or at the same time, we can speak illness into existence.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to let in your house? Fear or faith?
Bam.
So perfect. So
Bam.
perfect.
So what's next for Vic? Let us know what's next for you, Vic, and where people can get a hold of you. They want to continue the conversation. We know you have a book out. What is it called? Rhino Sharks. I was going to remember. Rhino Sharks and Unicorns.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what's next for you, dude? I mean, you obviously got a lot of life left in you and a lot of power in your thoughts and your imagination and the message you want to give. What's next for Vic Feazell?
Well, I'm still practicing law. We've still got our 2 offices. I'm hoping to get back into court someday. And I'm just about finished with Rhino, Sharks, and Unicorns, book 2. It's a 3-book series. Book 1 was a hero's journey.
Right.
Book 2 is the journey continues. And then book 3 is endings and beginnings. All Rhino, Sharks, and Unicorns. And the Rhino, the Shark, and the Unicorn might take too long, but anyway, it's another look at the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, only I've pared it down to 3 just to make it more simple.
And 3 is a magic number.
I'll come back and talk about the horsemen of the apocalypse sometimes, because those guys aren't anything like what people think they are. No, it's cool. It's really cool, and it's all good, and it's all about our own growth and change and evolution of consciousness. The first horse is the physical, the body, the one that gets sick and can die. The second one, the red one, the war, that's the emotional body. The third one, carrying the scales, that's our intellect. And man, our intellect can really do us a lot of harm,
Yes.
Sometimes we're way too smart for our good. But that fourth one, the one on the white horse, he's the one with the bow and the crown, and he gets his way. Well, the moral here is for us to merge all of these into one, so that the guy on the white horse is in control. And the bow and the arrow in the Bible symbolizes the spoken word, so that we can speak it and it's done.
Okay, so how about we do this, because I'm excited about that too, because I'm listening to that loud and clear, because I love the hero's journey that we see so much, where we watch somebody, the intellect drives us. And so you get to that wisdom space where you're like, here I am. And then you're going, here I am. Here I am. And then you're like, this sucks. And then you kind of come back to center. And that's why when I introduced you, I said from that point, I know you're an extremely intellectually smart person, but that's not what connected you and I. We're not sitting here trying to be up here. We met from here. We met from Heart Center, no questions asked. And I listened to, Chris had an amazing, he's got another show that he does, and he had a gentleman the other night that should be on the show with us. We should have one with him, because we will resonate. We will resonate so much. So let's do that. Let's have a show on that. Tell us when you're ready to do it. Let's have a show talking about Henry Lee Lucas and talk about all that as well. Because there's a lot of good stuff here. There's too much good stuff.
Really. It is.
Guys, it was great talking with you, Christopher. Really good to see you, man. Scott, always a pleasure.
Thank
100%.
you. Thank you so much. Final words, gentlemen. Final words before I take us out.
Namaskar.
Namaskar. And I want to say exactly what Vic said. Stop looking out here. Start looking in here. Namaste and namaskar.
Awesome, gentlemen. Hang on for just a sec. We're going to meet backstage here for a second. Oh, wow. What's up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Did we not say this was going to be an impactful show? Did we not say that we were going to go deep? Did we not say that we were going to impact your mind and your psyche for what it is that you can do from this point forward? We talked about it in the show. Choice. It was brought up in the comments. Thank you guys so much. Yeah, it's a choice. Everything is a choice. You choose to be a victim or a victor. You choose to react or respond. You choose to be a part of the solution or part of the problem. You choose to look at the past and live there, or fear the future, or to be in the moment. You choose. And one of the big things we talked about tonight was faith, right? So you could choose to have faith. You can choose to have faith that, just imagine what your life would be like if you said, you know what? I choose to believe and have the faith that everything that's going to happen is going to happen for me and not to me. I am going to have faith that whatever's going to happen, I'm going to become strong enough and knowledgeable enough and resourceful enough and gritty enough and fucking pissed off enough to get through it so that I can get on to my next journey, right? How many of you guys have real faith? I personally have faith. I have to have faith because everything that's going on in the world, I have to have faith that it's going to get really bad and then it's going to get really fucking awesome. You know, just imagine that. You know, when you have to go through hell to get to heaven, that kind of thing. I was giving somebody an analogy the other day. I'm like, you know, have you ever climbed a mountain or climbed to the top of something and been able to see a beautiful view? You're like, yeah. And I'm like, how was the climb? Oh my God, I had to go up all these stairs, or it took me this. I'm like, yeah, but how was the climb? You know, it was good, but how was the view? It was awesome. I'm like, okay, guess what? To get to an awesome view in life or get to an awesome place in life, you have to go through the grunt work. You have to go through the climb. And most people don't want to do the climb. Like, I don't want to do that. That's uncomfortable. That's painful. I just want the view. Well, guess what? You have to go through the climb. That's the beauty part of it too, because you become stronger. And as you become stronger and you look at that view, doesn't that view become more special? Doesn't that view represent something else when you've busted your ass to get there? Right? You have to have faith. You have to believe. You have to surrender. We talked about that tonight. Surrendering and forgiving. Number one, forgiving yourself. I talk to people all the time about that. I'm like, you know, do you love yourself? Yes or no? Okay. So that's kind of a no. So where do you need to forgive yourself? What stuff has happened in your past that you're still holding yourself responsible for that you cannot change anymore, but you can actually choose to give a different meaning, right? Forgiveness. I talk about it all the time on these shows. I had to forgive my mom. I could not understand her. I resented her. I was angry with her. All these different emotions that were not good for me. Didn't give a shit about her. They weren't harming her at all. But when I chose, again, that voice, that word, choose, I chose to understand her and empathize with her and her journey and forgive her. I'm like, you know what? Whatever it was, I'm the person I am today. You know, the peak, right? The climb was not enjoyable. No. Would I wish that climb on anybody? No. But the view of from where I'm at now and the view that I'm going to go to next and the view I'm going to go to next is beautiful. It's amazing. It's what legacies are made out of. So again, you guys can sit there and watch this and be all inspired and everything. But I encourage you, as soon as I hit stop, just take out a pen and paper and just sit there and say, who can you forgive today, including yourself? What baggage can you let go of? How can you start living in a centered place of mind? When Vic was talking about when he got apprehended by the FBI, if you haven't seen it, go see it. I get chills. I literally saw it and I watched him. I was like, God, fuck, he looks calm. I'm like, this is a serious situation. He went up against the Texas Rangers. And by the way, it's not the baseball team because that's what I thought originally for a second, just being honest. But he went up. He was like, no, we're going to fight for what's right and what's fair. We're going to risk for which that mattered. Even if this winds me up in 80 years in prison, which I'm sure, Vic, I'm sure you would say that you already had plans of everything that you're going to continue to do to impact the world. So again, you guys, what is it that you're going to do? And we want to hear back from you. This is one thing we're going to start doing on the show is after a guest comes on here, please send us comments and feedback. You guys know where me and Scott live, right here on Facebook. Send us comments and let us know what it is that you implemented from the show and which guest it was. So we can go back to that guest, you know, maybe a couple of months later, whatever it is, and say, hey, by the way, Vic, you know, when you did that podcast with us, when you did that show with us on the 16th, guess what? You know, I'm not going to name names because I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but guess what? Here's what they did with that. So we're asking you guys to do that. This is a community. This is a family. This is our way of making the world a better place for who we are and what we do. Myself, Vic, Scott, we all love you. Thank you guys so much for being here. Susan's here in the house. What's up, Susan? Good to see you. Teresa, Glenda, Bridget, I mean, Tina, you guys are all freaking amazing. Robert being here, Patricia, of course, Patricia. I have to say this again. She says, Vic, you have met the unstoppables, and what a wonderful privilege it is to listen to your heart. Let me just try that again. Cut. Let's edit that out now. Vic, you have met the unstoppables, and what a wonderful privilege it is to listen to you and hear your wisdom. Thank you all. Patricia is one of our hugest, dearest friends. Yes, you have met the unstoppables, and you guys are unstoppable too. Go out there and have a super kick-ass weekend. Again, be a part of the solution, not part of the problem. Let's find a way to heal humanity, heal ourselves, and make the world a really fucking kick-ass place. All right. I love you guys. We love you.